Hydrogen contains almost 3 times more energy per kilogram than gasoline. It can be produced using nothing more than water, renewable electricity, and a machine called an electrolyzer. When it's used inside a fuel cell vehicle, its only tailpipe emission is water. On paper, it sounds like the perfect fuel. So why aren't hydrogen cars everywhere? The answer isn't hiding inside the car. It's hiding in everything that happens before the hydrogen ever reaches the tank. Because this is where the story becomes surprisingly complicated. Hydrogen contains around 120 megajoules of energy per kilogram. Gasoline contains about 46 megajoules per kilogram. Compressed natural gas, or CNG, contains roughly 50 megajoules per kilogram. In other words, hydrogen stores almost 3 times more energy than gasoline for the same weight. That's exactly why rockets use it. It's why aircraft manufacturers continue investing billions into hydrogen research. And it's why many engineers still believe hydrogen could play a major role in the future of heavy transportation. So if hydrogen carries so much energy, why does it often lose the efficiency argument? The answer lies in a mistake almost everyone makes. We're comparing the wrong efficiencies. Discussions about hydrogen efficiency are often confusing because people measure different things: fuel energy content, vehicle conversion rates, or the electricity required for production. They're all using the word efficiency, but they're measuring 3 completely different things. Once you understand those 3 measurements, the entire hydrogen debate suddenly starts making sense. Let's start with the first one: fuel energy density. This is simply a measure of how much energy is stored inside the fuel itself. Imagine placing 1 kilogram of gasoline on a table. Now place 1 kilogram of compressed natural gas beside it. Finally, place 1 kilogram of hydrogen beside both. Even though all 3 weigh exactly the same, they don't store the same amount of energy. Hydrogen contains roughly 120 megajoules per kilogram. Gasoline stores around 46 megajoules per kilogram. Compressed natural gas comes in at roughly 50 megajoules per kilogram. That means 1 kilogram of hydrogen carries about 2.6 times more energy than the same weight of gasoline. And it explains something many people never think about. Weight matters. The heavier a vehicle becomes, the more energy it needs just to move itself. That's one reason hydrogen continues to attract interest for aircraft, ships, and long-haul trucks, where every kilogram saved can translate into more cargo or longer range. But there's a catch. Having more energy inside the fuel doesn't automatically mean you use that energy efficiently. For that, we need to look inside the vehicle itself. Tank-to-wheel efficiency. This asks a completely different question. Forget how the fuel was made. Forget how it got to the station. Pretend the fuel is already sitting inside the vehicle. Now ask one simple question. How much of that stored energy actually reaches the wheels? A typical gasoline engine only converts around 20 to 30% of the fuel's energy into motion under real-world driving conditions. The rest disappears as heat, friction, vibration, and exhaust. That's why the hood of a gasoline car becomes hot after a drive. Most of the fuel never became movement. A hydrogen fuel cell vehicle performs much better. Its fuel cell converts hydrogen into electricity at roughly 50 to 60% efficiency before sending that electricity to an electric motor. That motor is already highly efficient. In other words, once hydrogen is already inside the vehicle, it's actually remarkably good at turning stored energy into movement. This surprises a lot of people, because hydrogen isn't losing here. In fact, compared to gasoline, it's winning comfortably. So where does hydrogen fall behind? The answer is hidden in the journey that happens long before the driver ever presses the accelerator. Well-to-wheel efficiency. This is the measurement that changes everything. Think back to your first physics class. One of the earliest lessons many of us learned was that every time energy changes from one form into another, a little of it is lost, usually as heat. That's not bad engineering. It's simply how physics works. Now imagine the journey of green hydrogen. Electricity from a wind farm or solar farm powers an electrolyzer. The electrolyzer splits water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is then compressed to extremely high pressures, or cooled into a cryogenic liquid. It has to be stored, transported, delivered to a fueling station, pumped into a vehicle, fed through a fuel cell, converted back into electricity, and finally, used to drive an electric motor. Every single one of those steps costs energy. Now compare that with a battery electric vehicle. The electricity generated by a wind farm can often travel directly through the grid, charge the battery, and power the electric motor. Far fewer conversions, far fewer opportunities to lose energy. That's why battery electric vehicles usually achieve a much higher well-to-wheel efficiency than green hydrogen vehicles. Hydrogen didn't lose because it's a bad fuel. It lost because humans have to manufacture it. And every manufacturing step comes with an energy penalty. So if batteries are clearly better at using electricity, why are governments still investing hundreds of billions of dollars into hydrogen? To answer that, we need to look at the fuel hydrogen is trying to replace first: gasoline. If hydrogen is so promising, why are we still pouring gasoline into hundreds of millions of vehicles every single day? The answer is simple. Nature already did most of the hard work. Millions of years ago, ancient plants and microorganisms were buried beneath layers of rock and sediment. Over immense geological timescales, heat and pressure transformed that organic material into crude oil. Humans didn't create gasoline. We simply refined what the Earth had already spent millions of years making. That gives gasoline one enormous advantage. Almost every piece of infrastructure needed to support it already exists. There are pipelines stretching across continents, oil tankers crossing oceans, refineries operating around the clock, and well over 1 million fuel stations worldwide. Refueling takes only a few minutes, and modern gasoline vehicles routinely travel 600 to 800 kilometers on a single tank. That's incredibly difficult infrastructure to compete against. Gasoline also packs around 46 megajoules of energy per kilogram, making it one of the most practical liquid fuels ever commercialized. But it comes with equally significant compromises. Every liter burned releases carbon dioxide that had been locked underground for millions of years. Internal combustion engines waste roughly 70 to 80% of the fuel's energy as heat. And unlike renewable electricity, every kilometer driven consumes a resource that cannot naturally replenish on any human timescale. For decades, engineers accepted those trade-offs because gasoline was cheap, abundant, and convenient. But eventually another contender arrived. Not hydrogen, natural gas. Compared to electric vehicles and hydrogen, compressed natural gas rarely gets the headlines. Yet, in many parts of the world, it's already transporting millions of people every single day. Instead of refining crude oil into gasoline, CNG relies primarily on methane compressed to pressures of around 200 to 250 bar. By weight, it stores roughly 50 megajoules of energy per kilogram, making it remarkably close to gasoline in terms of energy density. Its biggest advantage isn't that it's revolutionary. It's that it fits comfortably into today's transportation ecosystem. Countries like India, Pakistan, Iran, Argentina, Italy, and Brazil have spent years building extensive CNG refueling networks. India alone operates one of the world's largest CNG vehicle fleets, with thousands of fueling stations serving buses, taxis, delivery vehicles, and private cars every day. More recently, Nigeria has begun accelerating its own transition through the presidential CNG initiative, encouraging motorists to switch from gasoline as fuel prices climbed following subsidy reforms. The goal isn't to eliminate fossil fuels overnight. It's to reduce transportation costs and lower emissions using infrastructure that can be deployed relatively quickly. That's an important distinction. CNG was never designed to be the final destination. For many governments, it's a bridge. Cleaner than gasoline, cheaper to operate in many regions, and capable of using much of the existing fueling ecosystem with relatively modest upgrades. But it remains a fossil fuel. Burning CNG still produces carbon dioxide. Its lower volumetric energy density also means vehicles require large, high-pressure tanks to travel comparable distances. So while CNG solves several economic problems, it doesn't solve the climate problem entirely. Which brings us to the technology dominating headlines today: battery electric vehicles. If hydrogen wins the energy density argument, battery electric vehicles win the efficiency argument. And they don't just win, they dominate. Remember the 3 efficiencies we talked about earlier. Battery electric vehicles benefit from having one of the shortest energy journeys imaginable. Renewable electricity leaves a wind farm, travels through the power grid, charges a battery, and powers an electric motor. That's it. Very few energy conversions. Very little wasted energy. Electric motors routinely convert 85 to 95% of electrical energy into useful motion, making them among the most efficient machines ever mass-produced for transportation. If you started with 100 units of renewable electricity, a battery electric vehicle could still use the vast majority of that energy to move down the road. Hydrogen simply can't, not because its fuel cell is inefficient, but because so much energy has already been spent producing, compressing, storing, and transporting the hydrogen before it ever reaches the vehicle. It's a bit like filling two buckets with water. One bucket sits right beside you. The other is carried through several leaky pipes before it arrives. By the time both reach the destination, one naturally contains much more water. That's exactly what's happening here. But if batteries are so efficient, why hasn't every transport company switched already? Because efficiency isn't the only engineering problem. Weight matters. Charging time matters. Range matters. Downtime matters. A delivery van making city stops has very different requirements from a mining truck operating around the clock. And an electric passenger car has almost nothing in common with a cargo ship crossing the Pacific Ocean. The larger the vehicle becomes, the more difficult batteries become to scale economically. That's precisely where hydrogen refuses to disappear. Because hydrogen isn't trying to beat batteries everywhere. It's trying to solve the problems batteries struggle with most. And that's where green hydrogen enters the story properly. So after everything we've covered, it almost sounds like hydrogen has already lost. Battery electric vehicles waste less energy. Gasoline is easier to distribute. CNG is cheaper to adopt. So why are countries still spending billions trying to make green hydrogen work? Because hydrogen was never trying to replace every vehicle on the road. It was trying to replace the vehicle's batteries struggle to power. And that's an important distinction. Green hydrogen doesn't exist naturally in large quantities. Unlike crude oil or natural gas, you can't simply drill into the ground and pump it out. It has to be manufactured. Most green hydrogen begins with something surprisingly ordinary: water. Using a machine called an electrolyzer, renewable electricity splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen is usually released. The hydrogen is collected, purified, compressed, and stored for later use. That's why it's called green hydrogen. The electricity used to make it comes from renewable sources like wind, solar, or hydropower rather than fossil fuels. At first glance, that sounds incredibly inefficient. And if your only goal is to drive a family car, it probably is. But engineers aren't building the hydrogen economy around family cars anymore. They're targeting industries batteries still struggle with. Think about a mining truck operating 24 hours a day, or a cargo ship crossing the Atlantic, or an aircraft carrying hundreds of passengers halfway around the world. A battery large enough to power those vehicles could weigh hundreds of tons. Every extra kilogram of battery is one less kilogram available for passengers or cargo. Hydrogen changes that equation. Remember the number from earlier: 120 megajoules per kilogram, almost 3 times the energy density of gasoline by weight. That incredibly high energy density is why companies like Airbus continue investing in hydrogen-powered aircraft concepts. It's why manufacturers are developing hydrogen fuel cell trucks capable of traveling hundreds of kilometers between refueling stops. And it's why industries like steelmaking, fertilizer production, shipping, and chemical manufacturing have become some of hydrogen's biggest supporters. Because in many of those industries, there simply isn't an obvious battery alternative. Hydrogen isn't replacing batteries. It's filling the gaps batteries leave behind. But if that's true, why are governments investing so much money before the technology is fully mature? The answer becomes much easier to understand once you stop thinking about hydrogen as a transportation fuel. Instead, think of it as an energy storage system. Imagine a country generating enormous amounts of electricity from offshore wind farms on a particularly windy day. The power grid can't always use all of that electricity immediately. Without storage, that excess renewable energy may simply be curtailed. In other words, clean electricity goes unused. Hydrogen offers another option. Instead of throwing that electricity away, use it to manufacture hydrogen. Store the hydrogen, transport it, then use it weeks or even months later when demand increases. Suddenly, hydrogen becomes less about cars and more about storing renewable energy across seasons. That's exactly what countries are beginning to build. Germany is investing billions into a national hydrogen backbone designed to transport hydrogen between industrial regions. Projects like Aquaventus hope to produce green hydrogen directly from North Sea offshore wind farms, reducing the need to transmit every electron back to shore before conversion. Japan has spent years preparing to import hydrogen from overseas as part of its long-term energy strategy. South Korea continues expanding hydrogen buses, trucks, and industrial infrastructure. China is rapidly deploying hydrogen trucks and fuel cell vehicles in sectors where long operating hours matter more than absolute efficiency. None of these countries are ignoring batteries. They're building different tools for different problems, because no single technology solves every energy challenge. So, is green hydrogen more efficient than gasoline? It depends. If you're talking about fuel energy density, yes, hydrogen wins comfortably. At around 120 megajoules per kilogram, it carries almost 3 times more energy than gasoline. If you're talking about tank-to-wheel efficiency, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles also outperform traditional gasoline engines by a significant margin. But if you're talking about well-to-wheel efficiency, battery electric vehicles remain the clear winner. And that's because hydrogen isn't fighting chemistry, it's fighting physics. Every extra step required to manufacture, compress, transport, and convert hydrogen costs energy. No engineer has found a way around those losses. At least not yet. But perhaps we've been asking the wrong question all along. Instead of asking, which fuel is the most efficient? Maybe we should be asking, which fuel is best suited for the job? A commuter car driving across town, a city bus stopping every few hundred meters, a truck crossing an entire continent, a cargo ship sailing for weeks without refueling, an aircraft flying halfway around the world. Those aren't the same engineering problem. So why would we expect them to have the same engineering solution? The future of transportation may not belong to gasoline. It may not belong entirely to batteries. And it may not even belong entirely to hydrogen. It may belong to all three, working where each one makes the most sense.